of insurance.
Dramatic video of a hit-and-run crash. A car appears to blow right through a red light and T-bone a police SUV, sending debris everywhere. The officer in the SUV is hospitalized in serious condition. The driver of that car that hit him sped off. The investigation is ongoing. 8 people killed across a city in a rampage of gun violence. The suspect opening fire at 3 different businesses, 6 of the victims Asian women, at a time when Asian Americans have been experiencing an increase in targeted attacks. The suspect tells authorities the crimes were not racially motivated, but blames the killings on his addiction to sex. How authorities tracked him down 3 hours away. Severe storm watch, the dangerous tornado threat across 8 states. 60 million Americans now on alert from Louisiana to the Carolinas for huge hail and winds gusting up to 80 miles per hour. Ginger Z with a forecast from the storm zone. Border crisis. FEMA opens up a convention center to hold up to 3,000 unaccompanied migrant teenage boys. The head of DHS grilled about the sudden increase of migrants trying to cross into the U.S. President Biden weighs in on whether he's urging migrants to come. Dangerous crossroads. Half the country easing restrictions while many states are actually seeing an increase in cases. The U.S. still leads the world in the number of infections and the mounting challenge in convincing some in the race to vaccinate. Tracking the virus through the sewers of France. Our James Longman shows you a side of Paris you definitely haven't seen before.
This is like the raw sewage that comes out here. Very glamorous.
And never stop fighting. A young man who had to relearn everything, including how to walk, after falling victim to gun violence. Tonight, he's getting back into the boxing ring after being knocked down, but not out.
What that guy has done and given me to train him, I can't tell you.
True resilience there. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. A crime against any community is a crime against us all. That was the message tonight from the mayor of Atlanta. Her city is ailing after a shooter opened fire, killing 8 people at 3 Asian-run spas in the metro Atlanta area. The first shooting at a spa in a suburb of Atlanta left 4 dead. Within the hour, police rushed to 2 other spas right across the street from each other in northeast Atlanta. Police say the 4 murder victims there were all Asian women. Authorities circulated these surveillance images of the possible suspect outside one of the spas. Police say the parents of 21-year-old Robert Long then identified him. Long was arrested 150 miles away. The attacks are sparking a growing outcry and fears that the murders truly were racially motivated. Tonight, there is extra security in other cities, including New York and San Francisco. Steve Osinsami leads us off from Atlanta.
Georgia investigators say that the 21-year-old who they just charged with murder is talking tonight. 6 of the 8 people he's now accused of killing are Asian women. And if they hadn't stopped him, police believe that Robert Aaron Long, seen here, would have continued on to Florida and gunned down more workers at similar businesses.
Some guy came in and took the gun. So everybody heard the gunshot.
Around 5 p.m. Tuesday, Long was seen in this surveillance video outside Young's Asian massage parlor in the North Atlanta suburbs. Police say he walked in, started shooting, and killed 4 people, 3 of them Asian. The niece of a victim who lived says her uncle wasn't even inside the business when he was shot.
He was coming out of the store beside the massage parlor and the other store beside it, and he was outside.
In the time it took to drive from the suburbs into the city, the call came into Atlanta police about another shooting at a similar business, a 24-hour spa.
We do not have a witness that actually is alive right now that can tell us who shot him.
While police were trying to help people who were dying at that location, witnesses were calling them about another shooting at another 24-hour spa directly across the street.
We need to make sure if we have any Asian spas, we need to be checking on them.
Police caught up with Long's black SUV south of the city, ran it off the road, and arrested the 21-year-old. His parents were the ones who called authorities and pointed the way. Police say they found him by tracking his cell phone. But investigators tonight now believe that the reasons behind these killings weren't as much about race and were more about violence against women. They say Long told them he was struggling with a sex addiction and was returning to punish the businesses he used to pay.
He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate.
Atlanta's mayor underlines that the tragedy of the deaths isn't suddenly any less.
We are not about to get into victim blaming, victim shaming here.
These killings come at a time when violence against Asian Americans is growing, thanks to the racist tropes surrounding the coronavirus. President Biden is being briefed by the FBI tonight.
Whatever the motivation here, I know that Asian Americans are in very concerned.
The vice president, whose mother was Asian, spoke to the issue.
I do want to say to our Asian American community that we stand with you and understand how this has frightened and shocked and outraged all people.
Yes, so many frightened and saddened by all of this. Steve Osunsami joins us now from Atlanta. And Steve, while police are still investigating the motive, it sounds like they're not taking any chances tonight and are already stepping up patrols.
That's right. You know, police, and not just police here, police in San Francisco and in New York are stepping up patrols around Asian businesses in Asian neighborhoods. Here in Georgia, the largest Asian population, and it is a significant population here in Georgia, lives in Gwinnett County, which is the county directly north of here. And their police tonight have come out saying that they plan to put more officers on the road until further notice. Lindsay?
You're talking about the officers there, but how's the Atlanta community reacting tonight to these shootings?
I think people are shocked. People are absolutely shocked. That is an incredible amount of death to begin with. Then you look at the situation that some of these victims were probably in. The Korean consulate has come out saying that they're now working with the families of these victims in Korea. Many of them were Korean, to get their bodies shipped back to Korea. It's a tragic situation, and it does have people on alert. We're talking about potentially anti-Asian violence and anti-women violence against women as well, that is being talked about in this situation. I think people are still wrapping their heads around the details as they hear them. But as city leaders here pointed out, they believe that they stopped this from being an even bigger tragedy. They firmly believe that if this suspect, the person who's accused in these murders, would have been able to travel to Florida, they say he would have continued his killing spree. Lindsay?
Right. Unfortunately, his parents made that call. Steve Osunsami, our thanks to you. And for more context on this, we'd like to bring in B.J. Pack, the former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Pack. This is still, of course, an active investigation with so many unknowns, but let's talk about motive. Police say that the suspect claims he had a sex addiction, but there's also concern that the killings were racially motivated. How hard might it be for investigators to determine the suspect's motive, and what's the bar to potentially charge this as a hate crime?
Well, the investigation's ongoing. So, a lot of times the investigation turns up, prior statements that might be racially motivated. Those are the things that they use to prove hate crime, both federally and also statewide. In the state context, there's really no need to prove that unless you want to get a sentencing enhancement. In federal context, if you want to charge a hate crime statute, obviously you need to prove that the violent act was motivated because of race. This has really rocked people to the core. I think people are afraid to go outside. I think it makes, if the evidence is there to support it, I do believe that the government, both either federal or state government, should really consider bringing a hate crime charge against the defendant.
When you were a federal prosecutor in this state, there were a rash of robberies against Asian American businesses and spas. Why do you think this community in particular was targeted? And why do you think that now we're seeing this rise in violence against Asian Americans across the country?
The violence and hate incidents against Asian Americans have been happening for decades. It just so happens that the pandemic has really brought to the forefront and the rise of social media and the fact that certain stories or videos could go viral, I think people are more aware of that. In the case that you mentioned, I think the motivation was based on a stereotype that Asian business owners carry around a lot of cash, they don't fight back, and these stereotypes were perpetuated by general media and things like that. So that's why they were targeted. I want to stress again that this is not really a new type of incident. This has been happening for decades. It's just that most recently we saw an escalation due to the pandemic and the rhetoric surrounding that. And there's a perception out there somehow people who are Asian Americans, particularly of Chinese descent, are responsible for the pandemic.
What has to change to stem this kind of violence? I know you're saying that it's nothing new, but certainly we have seen that escalation.
We have to start by cataloging it, right? And some of the states don't do a very good job. A lot of states didn't really, log hate incidents. I think that has changed a lot. In addition, we have to raise awareness this is going on. Culturally, many Asian Americans and Asians don't feel like they could report it and something will be done about it, right? They feel helpless. And as a result, community leaders and those of us, those institutions and outside of our Asian community who support fighting against hate incidents should learn about it and speak up when some of the people who are victimized are reluctant to do so.
And back to this case, police said that the suspect's parents contacted them to help identify their son from surveillance video. In your experience, how common is it for family members to do this kind of thing?
It's not that uncommon, frankly, because I think people know between right and wrong. I give kudos to the parents. I'm sure it was a very, very difficult situation for them as well. But I also want to commend the law enforcement officials for quickly apprehending a suspect.
And lastly, if I could ask you to take your legal hat off for a moment and just talk to us about your own personal concern about this heightened hatred against Asian Americans.
The theories such as the model minority myth and the way the Asian Americans were portrayed in mainstream media, I think that unless you know someone or are very close to someone and had conversations about their culture, they're going to rely on these stereotypes. We need to do a better job of breaking stereotypes and get to know a person and what makes them tick and understand them and where they come from to stop these type of incidents from happening. I personally, grew up in a town where there are not many Asian Americans. I too faced some hate incidents. A lot of times, those do not result in violent actions against me. But I know that there are several incidences and several occasions around the country where Asian Americans and Asian descent folks are facing or have been victimized by this. I encourage them to speak out. I encourage them to start cataloging this. And I encourage our Asian American colleagues to be advocates for perpetuating change and recognition.
Do you feel at all concerned for your own safety?
I personally do not, but sometimes I do wonder. I'll give you an example. I went to Stillman Park recently with my daughters, and a stranger recognized me, not necessarily because I was Asian, but because I was the former U.S. attorney here. But I didn't know who that person was, right? And with the rise in hate crimes and hate incidents, I was concerned. I was worried about what might happen. I shouldn't feel like that. But the fact of the matter is, because of the recent spike in these types of incidents, I think many of us are second guessing or even questioning our personal safety.
BJ Pack, we thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay.
Staying in the South now, millions are on alert tonight, 60 million to be exact across 7 states. The threat of tornadoes remains after what you can see has already been a violent day. But the National Weather Service is warning as night falls, there is risk for especially dangerous tornadoes, and they warn this is just the beginning. Victor Akendo is in Birmingham with more.
A dangerous, potentially deadly night ahead across a huge swath of the South. The Storm Prediction Center warning of a rare high-risk threat level for long-track, intense tornadoes.
Literally like a tornado.
Wayne County, Mississippi, and Chilton County, Alabama, among places where twisters were reported already.
Oh, major tornado! Major!
In Tuscaloosa, these University of Alabama students sheltering in a parking garage.
There's a tornado down. It's very dangerous. This is about 6 miles south of downtown Tuscaloosa.
It's just after 1 o'clock here in Birmingham. We are under a tornado watch, and officials want to make sure that people have a plan in place and they know where shelters like this one are located. This can hold 80 people, and as you can see, they're starting to file in. Deborah Johnson and Christopher Jenkins are not taking any chances. What was it about this storm coming this way that made you say, we're riding this out in here?
When the news people said it was going to be like a few years ago, and it was terrible. So that was enough for me, and safety.
Roads around Birmingham inundated, the storms coming in waves. The first one knocking out power to buildings in Dallas-Fort Worth. Lightning strikes knocking our Jackson, Mississippi affiliate off the air for a time Tuesday. Lindsay, the rain keeps coming down here in Birmingham with another strong line of storms headed this way. The tornado threat, it continues through the night, which is definitely the most dangerous time for a tornado to strike. Lindsay?
Our thanks to Victor. And now let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z, who's in Jackson, Mississippi tonight. Ginger, what's the latest?
Well, we've got a severe thunderstorm warning on top of us right now. The wind, the lightning, it's all coming in, the heavy rains. Flash flooding is part of the threat, but you know we're talking about tornadoes, Lindsay, going into tonight. So this is the main line. This is the one that hits us last. But there are severe storms and tornadoes with that particularly dangerous situation with the tornado watch that extends all the way into Alabama. This whole mass of 2 rounds of storms is going to keep moving east. There's that thunder. Now you can hear it on top of us. And the tornado watch will probably extend into North Georgia. We'll watch for that to happen in the overnight hours. Atlanta, you see it, 6 a.m. Central Time. You're waking up trying to get to work with those thunderstorms all around. Please, if you can delay that, do. The storms go all the way down to the Florida Panhandle, and then through the afternoon and evening, you move them east. We have a moderate risk, which is the second highest level risk, from Savannah up to almost the Virginia state line. This is going to include a lot of people going through our Thursday, Lindsay.
Yeah, we can hear that wind whipping out there. Ginger, our thanks to you. Stay safe. And now to the pandemic and the concern that this country may be at a tipping point. Cases are up at least 10% in 15 states. And tonight, the CDC is monitoring 2 new COVID strains. Dr. Fauci warns we remain in the middle of a serious outbreak. All of this is heightening the importance of vaccinations. 73,510,000 Americans have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine so far. And while some people can't find appointments, others who are eligible for the vaccine are reluctant to get the shot. Eva Pilgrim reports.
Tonight, St. Patrick's Day celebrations scaled down for the 2nd year in a row. As the country reaches a critical crossroads in this pandemic.
We are still in the middle of a serious outbreak. My concern is that we prematurely pull back and don't give the vaccines time to continue to protect the country.
Although the national case average is falling, 15 states are seeing at least a 10% increase in the last week, from the Midwest to the Northeast. But half the country is now easing restrictions, Minnesota starting its rollback.
We're winning and this thing's coming to an end.
But over the last 7 days, the case average there climbing 47%.
Minnesota, I think, is really a harbinger of things to come. We're loosening up all the restrictions we've had, and in some ways creating a perfect storm moment for virus transmission, whether it's a variant or not.
The CDC now adding 2 new strains first detected in California to its list of variants of concern, saying they may be about 20% more contagious, with states now expanding access to the vaccine, demand soaring.
The competition will be fierce. Who can type the quickest? Who knows the little shortcuts?
But with vaccinations quickly ramping up across the country, Disney CEO Bob Chapek revealing today that Disneyland in California will reopen at the end of next month, the park owned by ABC's parent company. Still, the looming challenge of convincing enough Americans to get the vaccine. A recent poll finding nearly half of Republican men would choose not to get vaccinated. George Stephanopoulos asking President Biden about the political divide.
How do you get the politics out of this vaccine talk?
I just don't understand this sort of macho thing about, I'm not going to get the vaccine, I have a right as an American, my freedom to not do it. Well, why don't you be a patriot? Protect other people.
And now former President Trump, who quietly got the vaccine before leaving office, telling his supporters to get it.
It's a great vaccine. It's a safe vaccine, and it's something that works.
The former president vouching for the vaccine there. Eva Pilgrim joins us now from outside the mass vaccination center at the Javits Center here in New York. Eva, there's a new forecast out tonight looking at some of the places where we could see a spring resurgence of the virus. Where do they say?
Lindsay, researchers at the Policy Lab are concerned about the first signs of a possible resurgence, especially in cities like Detroit, New York, and Boston. They say while they don't expect the intensity that we saw in the surge this winter, it's a reminder that this pandemic is not over yet. Lindsay?
Yeah, people have to remain vigilant. Eva, our thanks to you. Next to immigration and a tense hearing on Capitol Hill for the Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas as the surge of unaccompanied minors grows, with children under 18 now making up more than 50% of the people in border control custody. ABC's Marcus Moore has the latest.
The head of Homeland Security tonight squaring off with lawmakers on the growing influx of migrants and unaccompanied minors to the southern border.
Well, given the tremendous rise and surge of individuals coming to the border, wouldn't it be fair to call it a crisis? Because that's what your agents are calling it.
Mr. Ranking Member, I'm not spending any time on the language that we use.
Mayorkas doubling down, telling a House committee the border is not open, echoing what President Biden told our George Stephanopoulos.
Do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come, and what we're
The president also saying the U.S. is working on ways to allow people to apply for asylum from their country, hoping to deter them from making the dangerous journey. The U.S. bracing for a wave of migrants at the border in numbers not seen in the last 20 years. According to a source, unaccompanied migrant children under the age of 18 now account for more than 50% of everyone in Border Patrol custody. DHS said single adults and most families are being turned back. And late today, the Red Cross seen preparing for the arrival of migrant teens at this Dallas Convention Center turned temporary shelter, the FEMA site opening to ease the strain at the border.
Marcus Moore joins us now from Dallas. And Marcus, when can we expect to see some of these migrant teens come into that new Dallas facility, and how are political leaders in the state responding?
Well, what we have heard, Lindsay, from officials is that the kids, the first of them, could start arriving anytime today. And the volunteers with the Red Cross and other organizations have been here at the convention center preparing for them to arrive on those buses any moment now. In terms of what we've heard from political leaders, the governor today held a news conference, and he said that the Biden administration, through their actions, have opened the floodgates. And he has said that the administration is not prepared for the surge of migrants that we have been seeing along the border.
Marcus Moore, our thanks to you. And when we come back, why 2 jurors were dismissed from the Derek Chauvin trial. The mother-daughter duo allegedly caught trying to hack the homecoming election. You heard that right. But up next, our George Stephanopoulos sits down with President Biden for a wide-ranging exclusive interview. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the 2nd straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Do you belong?
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not replace us!
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Texas is forgiving about $29 million in electric bills following that deadly winter storm that left millions without power just last month. Some customers who kept their power were charged thousands of dollars, and the state attorney general there sued the energy company, and it's now filing for bankruptcy. The proposed filing is aimed at protecting about 24,000 customers from having to pay those storm-related bills. And now for more from George Stephanopoulos' exclusive interview with President Biden, a wide-ranging conversation covering issues from the state of the vaccine rollout to the crisis at the southern border, as well as the president's response to meddling from Vladimir Putin and whether New York Governor Andrew Cuomo should step down. Here's more from George.
So you've set out your goals for the country, 100 million vaccine doses by next week, $100 million out the door, every American eligible for the vaccine by adult American by May 1st, something close to normal on July 4th. But tell everyone, when is everything going to be normal for Americans?
Well, first of all, I won't even be able to meet the July 4th deadline unless people listen, wear masks, wash their hands, and socially distance, because not everyone by July 4th will have been vaccinated.
How do you get the politics out of this vaccine talk?
I, honest to God, thought we had it out. I, honest to God, thought that once we guaranteed we had enough vaccine for everybody, things would start to calm down. Well, they have calmed down a great deal, but I just don't understand this sort of macho thing about, I'm not going to get the vaccine, I have a right as an American, my freedom to not do it. Well, why don't you be a patriot? Protect other people.
How about emphasizing the positive? How has life changed for you since you got the vaccine?
I can hug my grandkids now. They come over to the house, I can see them, I'm able to be with them. I've had the vaccine, and secondly, it has changed my life in the sense that I've been able to demonstrate to other people that I doubt whether people would expect me to take it, but I think it was safe, to make the case that it is safe to take the vaccine. It's important to take the vaccine.
Let's talk about the crisis at the border. Some heartbreaking scenes down there right now. And a lot of the migrants coming in saying they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge?
Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years, in 19 and 20, there was a surge as well.
This one might be worse.
No, well, it could be, but here's the deal. First of all, the idea that Joe Biden said come, because I heard the other day that they're coming because they know I'm a nice guy and I won't do what Trump did.
This.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. They're not. The adults are being sent back, number one. Number two, what do you do with an unaccompanied child that comes to the border? Do you repeat what Trump did? You take them from their mothers, to move them away, hold them in cells, et cetera? We're not doing that. So what we're doing is we have brought in HHS and also brought in FEMA to provide for enough safe facilities for them to get out of the control of the Border Patrol, which are not designed to hold people for long periods of time, particularly children, get them out of those facilities, and most of them come with a phone number. So what we're doing is we're putting together an entire organizational structure so that within 7 days they're able to get in the phone, contact that number, find out whether there is a mother or a father, whether it is safe, whether it is a secure circumstance to get the child to that adult.
It's going to take some time, though, to get those policies in place again. Do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, and it's not going to take a whole long time, is to be able to apply for asylum in place. So don't leave your town or city or community. We're going to make sure we have facilities in those cities and towns run by DHS and also access with HHS, the Health and Human Services, to say you can apply for asylum from where you are right now. Make your case. We'll have people there to determine whether or not you are able to meet the requirement you qualify for asylum. That's the best way to do this. In addition to that, well, we also change the circumstances on the ground in those communities. You're going to diminish the reason why people want to leave in the first place.
Director of National Intelligence came out with a report today saying that Vladimir Putin authorized operations during the election to denigrate you, support President Trump, undermine our elections, divide our society. What price must he pay?
He will pay a price. We had a long talk, he and I. I know him relatively well. And the conversation started off, I said, I know you and you know me. If I establish this occurred, then be prepared.
You said you know he doesn't have a soul.
I did say that to him, yes. And his response was, we understand one another. I wasn't being a wise guy. I was alone with him in his office. That's how it came about. It was when President Bush had said, I've looked in his eyes and saw a soul. I said, looked in your eyes, and I don't think you have a soul. And looked back at me and said, we understand each other. Look, most important thing dealing with foreign leaders, in my experience, and I've dealt with an awful lot of them over my career, is just know the other guy.
So you know Vladimir Putin. You think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly. I'm not going to, by the way, we ought to be able, that trite expression, walk and chew gum at the same time. There are places where it's in our mutual interest to work together. That's why I renewed the START agreement with him. That occurred while he's doing this, but that's overwhelming in the interest of humanity that we diminish the prospect of a nuclear exchange.
President Trump reached a deal with the Taliban to have all American troops leave by May 1st. Are they going to leave?
I'm in the process of making that decision now as to when they'll leave. The fact is that that was not a very solidly negotiated deal that the former president, worked out. And so we're in consultation with our allies as well as the government, and that decision's going to be, it's in process now.
Likely to take longer?
I don't think a lot longer.
But May 1st is tough.
Could happen, but it is tough because, look, one of the drawbacks, George, and this is going to be like Sanskrit to people listening here, but it is the failure to have an orderly transition from the Trump presidency to my presidency, which usually takes place from election day to the time you're sworn in, has cost me time and consequences. For example, we didn't realize how bad things were in terms of lack of vaccines. We were not able to get access to this information. That's one of the issues we're talking about now in terms of Afghanistan.
Let me ask you about Governor Cuomo of New York. I know you said you want the investigation to continue. If the investigation confirms the claims of the women, should he resign?
Yes, I think he probably end up being prosecuted too.
But how about right now? You've said you want the investigation to continue. You saw Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, majority of the congressional delegation don't think he can be an effective governor right now. Can he serve effectively?
That's a judgment for them to make about their state where they can be effective. Here's my position. It's been my position since I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. A woman should be presumed to telling the truth and should not be scapegoated and become victimized by her coming forward, number one. But there should be an investigation to determine whether what she says is true. That's what's going on now.
And you've been very clear. If the investigation confirms the claims, he's gone.
That's what I think happens. And by the way, it may very well be, there could be a criminal prosecution that is attached to it. I just don't know, but let the investigation, and I don't know what it is, but I start with the presumption. It takes a lot of courage for a woman to come forward. So the presumption is it should be taken seriously, and it should be investigated, and that's what's underway now.
Our thanks to George for that, and be sure to check out the full exclusive interview right after the show. Still ahead here on Prime, why one big key to fighting COVID could be found in wastewater. We'll show you what we mean. A major Tiger Woods update as he works to get healthy again, and the growing concerns about the rise in white supremacy. We take a look by the numbers, but first, our tweet of the day from an Atlanta Falcons player with a simple message: stop hate.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not replace us!
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
24 hours, assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. And now to a disturbing new report by the Anti-Defamation League that found that white supremacist propaganda surged in the past year. So we take a look by the numbers. Specifically, we're talking about 5,125 cases of white supremacist propaganda efforts that were reported in the U.S. in 2020, according to the ADL. Now, these include the distribution of racist, anti-Semitic, and anti-LGBTQ flyers, stickers, banners, and posters. That's nearly 2 times the number of cases reported in 2019, and it's actually the highest number of incidents that the group has ever recorded. The ADL identified at least 30 groups responsible for spreading this propaganda, but found that 3 of them, Patriot Front, New Jersey European Heritage Association, and the Nationalist Social Club, were actually responsible for 92% of the supremacist activity in 2020. Patriot Front was behind more than 4,000 incidents in 2020, making them the most active white supremacist group for propaganda, according to the report. While America's Klan movement, which of course has a much longer history in the United States, is now behind just 2% of the cases of white supremacist propaganda. Still lots ahead here on Prime tonight. Our James Longman takes us underground in Paris, why the sewers could actually hold clues in the fight against COVID, and how boxing saved a victim of gun violence. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
We will guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug,
We tell all our patients how much they are loved. We hold their hands
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not replace us.
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads. It's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Police say 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long was out to kill Tuesday evening and had specific targets in mind.
He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction. We believe that he frequented these places in the past and may have been lashing out.
Police say the alleged shooter admitted to the killings, telling investigators he blamed these spas for his addiction, opening fire at 3 of them in and around Atlanta. Police say Long carried out his rampage across 2 counties, 45 minutes and 30 miles apart, killing 8 people. Most were women of Korean descent. While responding to the grisly scenes, authorities discovered these surveillance images of the suspect and quickly released them.
We were contacted by members of the family indicating that maybe their son. We were able to track his phone.
How do you think that would affect your ability to be impartial in this case?
In Minneapolis, 2 steps backward for the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin.
2 jurors that were seated for the trial were excused this morning after the court went back to question 7 previously seated jurors about whether they had heard about a civil settlement between the city of Minneapolis and the family of George Floyd that was announced on Friday. 5 jurors had said they did hear about it, but 2 were removed over how it might have affected their outlook on the case. That means there are now 7 jurors seated in total, with 7 more to go.
On Friday, the judge will decide on a motion to delay or move the trial. They'll also rule on whether Floyd's 2019 arrest can be admitted into evidence.
A Florida mom and daughter under arrest for allegedly rigging the election for homecoming queen. Officials say assistant principal Laura Rose Carroll and her daughter, 17-year-old Emily Rose Grover, illegally accessed other students' accounts so Grover would be elected homecoming queen. The mother-daughter duo arrested in Pensacola Monday. The investigation into the alleged scheme started in November after the Escambia County School District reported hundreds of student accounts at Tate High School had been hacked. Those accounts contain medical history, test scores, and other sensitive student information. School officials also discovered 117 homecoming court votes, all cast from the same IP address in a very short time. Now the duo facing felony charges for unauthorized access of those private accounts. Grover was expelled from school. Carroll suspended from her job.
Need a little more time on those taxes? The IRS agrees. It's sliding the deadline by a month.
According to a congressional aide briefed on the plan, the filing deadline will be pushed from April 15th to Monday, May 17th. That would give taxpayers more time to prepare their filings after many Americans were disrupted by the pandemic-related work changes.
Golf legend Tiger Woods now out of the hospital and recovering at home. He's back in Florida 3 weeks after a car crash left him with severe leg injuries. In a tweet, Woods thanked the hospital workers in California for their care and fans for their support.
Woods had been treated at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and Harbor UCLA Medical Center, where he was rushed for surgery after the crash. Doctors implanting a metal rod, screws, and pins to stabilize the shattered bones in his right tibia, ankle, and foot.
It's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive.
An investigation into the crash is ongoing.
Welcome back. And we're now going back to coronavirus. Early detection is critical to stopping the spread of COVID, of course. But as we all know, that can be challenging when the virus is able to transmit from people who are not symptomatic. In Paris, scientists are testing the wastewater to track the virus. How does it work? Our James Longman explains.
Paris, one of the most visited and celebrated cities on Earth. The City of Lights is waiting to welcome visitors back again soon. But while these sites remain dormant, waiting for the pandemic to end, there's a lot happening below ground in the fight against coronavirus.
So we've got to get kitted up here at the waste treatment plant. So I suppose if I fall in, then you'll see me, won't you?
And I'm talking about sewage.
I can tell you it smells pretty fragrant in here.
I'm at a water treatment plant on the outskirts of the French capital.
Et l'eau est filtrée avant d'arriver ici ou pas? Non, là, c'est l'eau brute. Completely. Okay, so the water has not been filtered in any way. It's appearing, this is like the raw sewage that comes out here. Very glamorous.
Not the Paris you expected, perhaps, but the work taking place here is some of the most cutting edge in the world. It's called Aubépine, a nationally funded network that monitors nearly 50 wastewater stations for signs of SARS-CoV-2.
So that's the all-important sample, and the crucial difference here is that whilst in a human you might get coronavirus symptoms days after originally getting infected, this sample can show coronavirus immediately in the water. It gives immediate results to scientists and to the government so they can make policy that can act fast.
Once retrieved from the sewage system, the science can begin. The key here is the sample base. Everyone.
Not everybody takes a test. Not everybody goes to hospital. Not everybody has symptoms, but everybody goes to the toilet.
Exactly. Monitoring coronavirus levels in sewage is an early warning system and has helped France better understand the spread of the disease and allowed it to pinpoint where further restrictions are needed and where others can be lifted. It's the most advanced study of its kind in Europe.
So the idea is that the samples arrive here from the water processing plant, and the first thing you've got to do is analyze what's in the sample.
Exactly.
Right, and so what are you looking for?
We are looking for the presence of SARS-CoV-2 genomes inside the wastewater.
Okay, and how do you do that?
3 steps. The first step is to concentrate the viruses using centrifugations. So the step here is to take the sample you see here and to put it inside the tubes to produce the centrifugations and to recover the genome of the viruses at the bottom of the tubes.
Okay.
And remove the water and just keep just the viruses.
It's not just coronavirus they have to watch out for.
Those little worms that eat your inside.
Yes, and also a lot of bacteria. Some could be harmful and some are just naturally occurring bacteria in the network or in the...
This is rather brave, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
The work here is also shining a light on all-important variants. They can be picked up early.
Sebastian is doing a PCR test at the moment.
Yeah, a different one, but yeah.
Right.
Sebastian is working on how to detect the variants. I am correct, Sebastian. Yeah.
Can you discover different types of COVID?
Yeah, that's a question about the variants and the English or the South African variants. We try to perform a specific qPCR to discriminate between the whole quantity of coronaviruses and the specific mutations related to some of the variants. But it's actually a work in progress.
Infectious disease specialist Dr. John Brownstein describes it as the future of disease surveillance and prevention.
Wastewater epidemiology represents this whole new opportunity. And so it means that you could potentially detect illness even before people even know that they're sick. There is no sort of individual privacy issues because you're aggregating across large parts of the population. So it makes it much easier to collect this data and share it broadly.
In the United States, companies like Massachusetts-based BioBot pivoted from testing for opioids to analyzing sewage. But the US is still far from having a national monitoring system like the French.
There has to be a sort of a federal effort to fund these kinds of tools like wastewater data to make it actually a continuous effort across the country. Because of course, as we know with coronavirus, it's not just, highly clustered. We know that, there is rapid spread of this virus across communities. And so we have to have visibility across all parts of the country in order for these tools to really be effective.
For the French, testing the water isn't just a useful way to work out when to ease restrictions, but a way to make sure they don't have to be imposed again.
So who knows? It could be sewage that is the key to freedom in France.
That's a good question. The funny way to say the thing. It's perhaps one of the indicators to allow to have a vision of the future of the outbreak.
James Longman for ABC News Live in Paris.
Really interesting stuff there. Our thanks to James. And when we come back, a life that was almost lost to gun violence built back up in the boxing ring.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Finally tonight, an inspiring story reminding us all that no matter what life may throw our way, never stop fighting. Ike Ejachi has this story.
Stepping into the ring for a fight can be daunting for anyone. But for Lorenzo Thomas, it's a fight he embraces, especially after what he's been through.
Good. Feels good, releasing any stress. Also just trying to do something with my life.
Stacy Tucker says her son's been throwing punches long before getting into the ring.
Lorenzo always have been a fighter. I could tell you that.
It's a trait she says he got from his father, a cyclist who made it to the Seoul Olympics in 1988.
He took up the cycling that he liked to do like his father.
Was he good?
He was good. He was great. It was great.
But Lorenzo's active life came to a sudden halt on the night of August 11th, 2013.
I got a knock on my door. So when I opened up the door, his friends that were with him that evening said to me, Lorenzo was hurt, he got shot. And I said, huh? What do you mean? Going down to the hospital, I was looking to see something horrific. But when me and my older son went in and we looked at him, he looked at peace.
At that moment, did you think Lorenzo was going to die?
To be honest, no. Because my faith is that strong.
Down, but not out. Lorenzo kept fighting.
There's a reason for everything.
There were so many things going on. He was in a coma for 3 days. They had to go in because he had fragments from the bullet wound that on this side of his head, the damage from the bullet caused a shift in his spinal cord on the top. He had a trach, he had to get a G-tube. They weren't sure if he was gonna make it.
Lorenzo spent almost 3 months at Long Island's Winthrop Hospital, followed by several weeks in rehab.
He had to learn to do a lot of things over again, to talk, to walk, to eat. He was like a newborn baby. I had to do everything for him.
For 6 years, Lorenzo kept fighting, working so hard to finally reach the point where he could use a walker to get around by himself. In 2019, his fight entered a new round. Inspired by his Olympic father, Lorenzo decided to take his fight to the ring, which began with the ring of a phone.
So when he called me, it sounded like as if somebody had a little too much to drink, or they were trying to prank me.
That's Michael Corleone, Lorenzo's coach and mentor, in his gym in Hempstead, Long Island.
Must have been about close to 10:30 in the morning. I see a gentleman on a walker trying to get to my front door. I ran to the door, I opened up the door. I felt like the biggest jerk, because it turned out that this was a real phone call.
Michael immediately put Lorenzo in gloves and began showing him the ropes.
You could see that the want and the desire to do what it was I was asking him to do was there. So at the end of the workout, the mother asks me, okay, well, what do I owe you? I says, ma'am, I did not ask you for money, did I? She says, no, but it can't be free. I said, really, why not? And if I say it's free, it's free. She says, why would you do that? I said, did you see the smile on that young man's face? That was payment enough for me.
Mike is a sweetheart. He's compassionate and he's loving. And I see that with his relationship with Lorenzo.
When he first came, the walking was difficult. Sometimes he'd come in with a walker, sometimes I'd have to, as he progressed, he would hold on to my arm. At a point now, the kid walks in, takes over the speed bag, and walks over to the sit-up board. I'm really the blessed one, because for what that kid has done, I get choked up. That's a boy. What that guy has done and given me to train him, I can't tell you.
According to the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, people who suffer from traumatic brain injuries from gunshot wounds only have a 10% survival rate. Those who do make it live with severe damage to their cognitive and motor skills. But Lorenzo's motor skills have beaten the odds, and thanks to social media, Lorenzo's story has garnered nationwide attention, with some of his videos getting millions of views.
I spent hours every day, every night, answering the messages that we get on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
How do you feel the fact that you may be an inspiration to others?
Well, I'm glad to be an inspiration to others because I'm so young. I think that everyone can do something to the best of their abilities, because it's all about moving forward.
Life will knock you down. It's going to be your job to get back up. How bad do you want it?
Ike Ajachi, ABC News, Hempstead, New York.
2. 2. On that foot. That's a boy. 2. 3. Good job. 4, 3.
What an inspiration. Our thanks to Ike and Lorenzo for sharing his story. Before we go tonight, our image of the day. Take a look at this dazzling display of green, courtesy of drones, 500 of them to be exact. This was actually pre-recorded in Dublin, Ireland earlier this month, but unveiled just in time for St. Patrick's Day today. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us, and have a great night.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.